All right, welcome to the second hour of News Hour. Handing over there is Grace Geruto. And thank you for staying with us. Now, tonight there's a lot to talk about. The Devolution conference just got underway in Uasin Gishu, Eldoret town. It's celebrating 10 years. There's a lot of things that have been said about Devolution. We're also seeking to take stock of the 10 years of devolution, at least where we can. We'll be looking at the sentiments from President William Ruto, who earlier on was at the conference. Aside from that, there's a lot that has also been talked about regarding the dialogue that is currently underway between Kenya Kwanza and, of course, the Azimio One Kenya. But the top story tonight is about the arrest of Jackson Mandago, the senator for Uasin Gishu County. I mean, he's not attending the conference, and he's a former immediate governor for Uasin Gishu County. Actually, the pioneer governor, two-term governor, was in Gishu County. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming tonight. Professor Fred Ogola, scholar and political analyst, and of course, Dr. Barak Muluka, long-time political commentator and also a scholar. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
The last time you were sitting on this table.
A year ago.
I
told you things and you didn't believe me.
Are you coming to rub it on my face?
No, I'm just observing that everything I told you here has since come to pass. And everything I'm going to tell you here will still come to pass.
And indeed, it's come to pass, but there's a lot of complaints, about how the government is working for the people, the hustlers.
As can only be expected, because there will be detractors. You don't expect them to go onto rooftops and to say, you are doing well, you are working well. There is also a media that seems to be crusading, that seems to be quibbling, that seems to be looking out for what is not happening the right way. Of course, always certain things will go wrong.
All right.
And it depends on what your agenda is.
And depends on where you sit.
That too.
So tonight, I'm sitting at the center of the table as you sit on the driver's seat, Kenya Kwanza. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Good to
I have
see
to say
you
that.
too.
It's a long coming, but I'm glad to find you. And I know you have other roles that are keeping you away from the round table. But let's begin the discussion tonight, Prof. Yes. I know we'll let you know Barak is my long-time friend.
Yes.
I haven't seen him for a year, actually. So let's begin the discussion tonight with what is happening in Nakuru. The former governor, Jackson Mandago, now Senator Uasin Gishu County, is spending the night in custody. I'd like to begin with you because I am aware you have a bill that seeks to stop governors who have completed their term, 10-year term, from assuming any other office, member of parliament or senator. Your bill was proposing there is a rest in between of 5 years.
Yeah, I had foreseen this before. Actually, after the election immediately, we formulated this bill in October, launched signature collection in Bomas of Kenya, 28th of October, stating that once you have become a governor, you should wait for cool-off period, because you see, immediately after you become a governor, there's always a lot of auditing being done in your county, and most of them are being presented at the Senate. At the same time, if you climb to the Senate immediately, you are seen in the seat of power, so it's very difficult for people to audit you. I also talked about the issue of the presidency, that if you are a deputy president, you're not supposed to run for office immediately. You should have a cool-off period. Of course, you said you cannot legislate good manners. But let me tell you what, if we have a country where people do not have good manners, then we have to legislate them. That's why even God came with a commandment. He said, do not do this, do not do that, do not do this. Do not steal, do not do this. Because if you leave human beings on their own accord, they'll do what is wrong. But you look at what Mandago has done, is clearly that is a difficult situation. And senators, his fellow senators in the Senate, couldn't tell him on the face this is wrong because they become colleagues. And that's why I wanted him to be out of the Senate, so that when reports come to the Senate, it can be cleansed. And I'm sure that we do this because Kenyans cannot understand. Look at what happened in the US. Joe Biden was Obama's vice president. And he decided to go rest for one term. He waited. Then he came back and actually ran for office. And running for office, he won the election. So it doesn't stop you if you leave power. But you saw what happened in Kenya also, where there's a president in office trying to finish his term, and his deputy is trying to take over. And you see, that was not really nice. That's why we are where we are now. Because had it been that William Ruto would have been told to wait for 5 years to run for office, there could be no that antagonism. where your boss says, me, I'm supporting this person for you on the other side. You saw again what happened between Moi, when Moi went to support Uhuru Kenyatta, and you realize that was also another challenge when Mudavadi was also trying, and the fact that Mudavadi was not running, it made things a little interesting because Uhuru Kenyatta was an outsider, so he did bring a lot of challenges. So we need this cool off period in all situations.
Okay, but the question specifically is what is happening, the arrest, the court order and all. Was it a little too late? I mean, there's been a lot of hue and cry regarding this, especially from Uasin Gishu. It's taken a court order for Mandago to present himself.
You see what I'm telling you, that some people are very special here. That it takes that long. And in fact, I also listened to the president's statement in Uasin Gishu, and I was so disappointed.
With the president's statement?
Yes, he was. I was disappointed. When he said that, he said two statements, that if you stole people's money, you should start planning how to pay it. Planning. You have stolen people's money, you are still being told...
No one has been convicted, Prof.
No, but I'm saying arrest was, the investigation was supposed to take place immediately, statement could have been written immediately. Then he went on to say that those who lost money, the government will give them scholarship. So you have stolen people's money. Then the government comes to give scholarship to people whom you have stolen their money.
I don't think he has been convicted. We can't say for certainty that he is guilty.
Well, I mean, what we are saying that the arrest is too late.
Okay, the arrest.
Let me ask you, Ken, if it was you, could it have taken those hours?
Okay, good question. Let me take it to Barack. Was it too late now that he has been presented before the police? I mean, he's made statements previously in Nairobi at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and that was based on Chapter 6 of the Constitution. And now he has been questioned, and tomorrow probably he'll be arraigned.
Okay, there are many things here which have been said, indeed as they ought to have been said. But let us begin by observing that in criminal law, it can never be too late. Justice will catch up with you, even 20 years later, 30 years later. Criminal law does not allow anyone to say that it is now too late. Of course, there could be challenges that if it is delayed, the possibility of evidence being lost arises, the possibility of some of the potential witnesses having been there, no longer being there, also comes into the reference frame. But more fundamentally, the questions that you asked at the beginning, and I haven't seen Professor Ogola's bill. I would want to have the opportunity to interact with it and to see what the granular details are. They say that all the religions are the same, but each one considers all the others to be the devils, and they say that the devil is in the detail. Yeah. So I would like to see what he has said. I think there's such a thing as internal self-referencing. There are certain positions which after you have occupied, when you seek to be elected to some other offices, it does look like some kind of demotion. We have not very clearly in this country delineated in terms of hierarchy between the governors and the senators to say which of the two positions, which of the two offices is superior to the other. But I think that when we look at the manner in which first-term senators in 2017 migrated to the counties to try to become governors, that perhaps there's more prestige, if not power, in the office of governor. Yeah. And therefore, when you decide that you want to run for the Senate after you have served as governor, you kind of demote yourself, and perhaps we do not even need to put you into some kind of prefecture for that. Your own internal self-referencing should guide you. That if you are president, for example, President Uhuru retired last year, and knowing very clearly that he's retiring, he could also have elected to run for Senate or to become a governor or to become a member of parliament. I think internal self-referencing ought to be the yardstick.
Sorry, that you know what I just said before. Many people left to their own design. In fact, human beings left to their own design, they will not do the right thing. Someone says that a human being is a rebel in itself. So if you look at those self-referencing, didn't happen. Now, what you're talking about took place in Siaya. I was privy to discussion when Oburu Odinga wanted to become senator, Orengo wanted to become senator. They fought over these two positions between them, Oburu Odinga and Orengo. And there was someone saying, why don't you become governor? But people didn't see. They thought that the governor was more someone in the village, but senator was someone more in the city. And the city status of the senator looked more prime. But then people discovered much later that actually these ones were actually very good positions. But Dr. Muluka, if you just look at the honest thing we are seeing in this country, in the political, there is no much decorum. And if you are talking about self-referencing, this is for professionals. Me and you sitting here talking about self-referencing. Some people don't care. Like, for example, the former governor of Siaya, that is Rasanga, he wanted to vie for MP of Alego Songa. He had to be rendered upon and told, excuse me, my brother, you can't do that. So we have seen crazy things happening in this country. So we can't foresee that if you allow these things to people's own design to do. By the way, why do you want all those years in those positions? Are there no young people outside there who also need them? That for you shift from being governor, then you become a senator.
The question is, when you're young and you occupy the position of a governor, where do you go after that?
You go into retirement.
Yes.
At what age?
It doesn't matter. If you are old enough to be governor, if you are old enough to be president, when the tenure ends, you should also be old enough to go into retirement.
Yeah.
I think it ought to be that simple. And best practice elsewhere in the world indicates that when people have ascended to the apogee of political office, if that office has got timeline limitations, when the season ends, you retire, you find other things to do, you set up a foundation, go into charity. Lots of people who do politics.
In other words, find something.
Find something.
I'll reference this now that you're saying 1865.
Yes.
Abraham Johnson, right?
Yes.
President who replaced Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president of the US. He's the only guy who was a president. He replaced Abraham after the assassination, right?
Yeah.
1865. He became president for a while, right?
Yeah.
He was the ranked worst president. And then he rested for 5 years, ran for Tennessee Senate and won.
Yeah.
And died 5 months after assuming office. I mean, there is examples.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's a good example, though the person you refer to had some other problems that led to his stepping aside as such.
Yes.
Because he tried to reverse the proclamation of emancipation. And it's remembered that he ran on a joint ticket with Abraham Lincoln, and I think what was called the Nationalist Party, to sort of try to bring the United States back into unity, because of the way in which they were very terribly divided because of the question of emancipation. And he paid the price for attempting to reverse the proclamation of emancipation of slaves.
And Ken, let us not forget to ask what could be the intention of Senator Mandago after being governor to run for senator. Could it that he thought that this position could secure him, given what might be, he's not yet guilty of course, that might be he knew he did in Washingishu? I wouldn't rule out that one.
Okay. Now, when it comes to that, I think we need to be careful again that we do not appear to condemn someone before unheard.
Yes.
I think the converse of everything that we have said here so far is that everyone actually has got the constitutional right to decide that they want to run for this office or the other office. If President Uhuru Kenyatta in another 2, 3, 4 years decides that he wants to run
he'll only be 67
for Gatundu South.
Too young.
67, yeah.
For Gatundu South, which I believe is his home constituency. It's within the
Article 38 of the
domain
Constitution.
of his rights, and that's why we are talking about something called manners. And there should be manners even in politics. I don't want to impute any ill motive on the part of Senator Mandago. He has been arrested, I'm told, and he's supposed to be arraigned before the courts, and one can only wait and see what happens. In a sense, all these things that are happening, Professor Ogola, I think they are good things. They are good things because they are testing the pillars of our democracy, they are testing the pillars of our constitution, they are testing the pillars of our institutions, and in the fullness of time, later generations will take a lot of lessons from these things that are going on.
But let me ask a specific question, because he brought it up. The president says, you prepared to refund this money to the parents and students. And then he comes again and says, because hao ni watoto wa nyumbani, tutatafuta vile tunawasaidia na scholarship. I mean, you giving an excuse already for this person who's supposed to give the funds. So don't you think the president was putting the cart before the horse on that? Before even the money is recovered, 1.1 billion is not small money.
There are a number of things here. Once again, there are children whose adversity we cannot afford to ignore. And I think it was Legislator Sudi who said, let us do something for the children. Even as we address the question of who the culprits are in these matters, I did not follow the live telecasts about the things that happened in Eldoret today, and therefore I may not know what precisely the president said. But I think that there is a case for doing something for those children, while at the same time looking for the opportunity to take the culprits to book.
Okay. Good, unless you have something to add.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the delaying of it, that's why even you say that justice cannot be, it can take long. The point is that when it was the election, we was a governor more than a year ago. This money was taken from these children more than a year ago. But losing 1 year, you can imagine losing 1 year of your life. Can you imagine what that is? It is
a terrible thing, Professor. But also sitting on your rights for 1 year is a bad thing. They also kept quiet for a very long time. And I think it is...
The aggrieved parties, you mean?
Yes. Yeah, they just started getting out of the woodwork, I think, about 3 or so months ago. They also sat on their rights for a very long time. And I think that within the corridors of law and justice, sometimes people whose rights have been violated have also been asked, why have you...
With honesty, Doc, we are looking at people who are very much low down there in Washingishu. Before you make your noise, until it's heard at the state level, it takes time, Barack. I know cases that has taken much more time to come to the limelight just because media, as you know it, before KTN can know what is happening in my village in Ogenya, sometimes it might take time. Sometimes you can even report to the police, and these policemen, a governor, a senator is not something, just somebody very junior. And the apparatus of the police go where power is. This is what we know. The policemen sides with the powerful people. They don't side with the poor people. You see during Mandamano, on which side were the policemen? Were they in the side of the people who are weak or strong? They went on the side of people who are strong. And as far as I'm concerned, there must be people trying. I have a case in Busia where there's a lady who was mistreated in front of a governor, in front of county rep. And that lady is seeking justice. I've written a letter to the DCI, I've written a letter to the Anti-Corruption Commission, I've written a letter to the police IPOA. Even until today, I have no response. And she's claiming she was mistreated, she was beaten in live public. So these are cases we are aware of. So I'm trying to say that we can look at it in a small way. For you, if you can report to the police, it will be headline news. For Ken, it can be. For me, it might be no one cares. Who is Fred Ogola after all? So I'm saying there must be the law. Actually, in justice, they have said the might is always right. That's even what's been passed by one of the greatest philosophers like Aristotle, Socrates, and we are seeing it today. How can the president go and not even say this guy should be arrested? He didn't even call on justice, say return the money. It's not about returning the money. If I find you stealing something from me, even if you return, theft has been registered. You should be taken to justice. And that's why I was not very pleased with the president's statement.
You are going, Ken, to have to introduce the bell.
I know. You have all the time to respond to that. It's an interesting perspective, so I had to listen. I was smiling.
And also to refrain from this constant reference to the president. The president did that. It is possible to isolate these issues and discuss them. And agree, for example, that we must demystify office in this country. Especially high office must be demystified. And when someone is suspected of contravention of the law, when someone is suspected of taking advantage of the ordinary people, poor people, maybe getting them to sell their property and inveigling them in the process and possibly swindling them of their meager resources, such a person should be taken to book. And if we assume, as we must do, that Senator Mandago, during his tour of duty as governor in Eldoret, actually took advantage of these people, then we must say that this arrest of his is a positive activity. It is something good that has happened, and going forward we should focus a lot more on whether justice is going to be served or not served, instead of getting stuck in the quagmire and lamenting that the president should have done this, the president should not have done that. It is usually when we lose focus of the next motions going forward that then the culprits find escape routes. I do not agree with my brother here that I'm a very big person and that he is a small person. Ogola and I are in what is called a peerage. Yeah? And within this peerage, we both toe the straight and narrow line that is circumscribed by the law, the rule of law. And if we should behave in a manner that contravenes the law, we should be arrested. I do not agree that during Mandamano, the police were on the side of the high and mighty. The police were on the side of law and order. Now, if you say you are going to have Mandamano tomorrow, and by midnight before tomorrow, you are already lighting fires in the streets, you are already throwing barricades all over the place, barring people who want to go about their activities from carrying out those activities, then that is no longer a demonstration, that is anarchy. And anarchy must be dealt with firmly and decisively. In fact, those fires should be removed so that those who want to use that space to do their mandamano can use that space to do their mandamano.
Are we going to talk about mandamano? Because we're completely
but you see, there are some things to correct here. I strongly disagree because they suspended it. In fact, by suspending law, because it's a public order act you're allowed. When you suspend the law, the people suspended that thing, the people created anarchy. When you said you can't do what is your constitutional right, that's why I'm not even joking. I took IG Kome to court and petitioned that he should be removed from office. I went to Parliament. Then the clerk wrote me a letter telling me that only the president can remove him from office.
And that's why we cannot deal with that.
Yes, I'm
because
saying
it will prejudice you when you
totally disagree that.
So since
I totally disagree that the police was on the side.
He cannot canvass
since you're already in court.
If you do that, you know it will prejudice you. But what I don't agree with Barack is one, that we should demystify the office to an extent that the president walked into this the first time he's speaking about it. So by saying that, he's sort of gagging him from talking about the president's statement, which is also subject of discussion, because he's the one who walked into it today, Barack.
You see, as umpire, you are not supposed to agree or disagree. You are supposed to just adjudicate.
You want to gag me. You're also seeking to gag me tonight. No, but I'm just saying that the moment you say that, as the umpire, I should also reintroduce it back and tell you fair play on the table tonight is allowing him make his comments.
And I agree completely that he should make those comments, including criticizing the president, because that is part of our democracy, that we must criticize our presidents when they also are placed on weighing scales, on our weighing scales, and in our estimation we consider that they have played below our expectations for that office. On the other hand, if it becomes a quagmire that you are not able to move past, then we should say that we need to make progress. We have had you on that one.
All right. Gentlemen, my editor, Koreir, will kill me because we've taken 30 minutes on this. But I really needed to talk about devolution. One of the things the president says, the reason why devolution has not succeeded at this major point, he's talking about corruption, mismanagement, bad governance and all. He says this is the reason why we have not realized the fruit of devolution. I don't know if you agree from that point. I mean, 10 years later, if we're still talking about the basics of undermining devolution, yet this was the ray of sunshine in running this country. Let me begin with you again. You scorecard for devolution 10 years on.
First of all, Ken, the thing is that devolution was a novel idea. The execution, when the execution was taking place, I remember I was on the table when this discussion was taking place. There was this thing whereby, do you do a big bang or we do it in phases? Meaning just take national government function and drop it, boom, to the county. So some people, for example, I would say that some people, I don't want to mention their name, they were pushing for big bang, throw it quickly, because they're saying, when they're telling Kibaki, you are holding it too much, why don't you just release it? So when they threw the big bang, and I can give you an analogy here, devolution had no system, it has no structure, it had no process, then they dropped it. Now, do you know why you do not need to be an engineer to drive one of the most sophisticated cars, for example, Range Rover Vogue? Even a class 8 dropout. In fact, that's why driving do not require you to have a degree of engineering. Because the car has got a system, the car has a process, the car has a structure. But devolution don't have it. I'm telling you, even one of the most qualified persons sometimes can fail as a governor. You can even bring Obama to run a county like Machakos, and he will completely get it wrong, because when there's no process, there's no system, there's no structure, it doesn't work. Look at what Germany has done. In Germany, if you just take Berlin and clear it out of Germany, the economy of Germany will still be positive by around 2%. But you clear Nairobi, yet we did devolution. Nairobi will take away almost 50% of the economy will be gone. If you just put Nairobi on fire and run it down, tell me what's in Kenya? Nothing else. So I'm trying to say devolution people are not ready with the processes, systems and structures, but we devolve functions where you find somebody as a governor. There's a time something made me laugh. I heard somebody was Deputy Sergeant at Arm, Migori County. You know, we devolve everything that was here. We are looking for how to give people positions and role and pay salaries. We were creating jobs in devolution. We are not creating development. And replicated everything, including what was not necessary. We devolve everything we did well up here, which is corruption. The president is very right. We devolve it there. Lack of leadership at national level was also devolved downstairs.
Okay.
So everything that went wrong. Then secondly, the resources were not devolved fairly. And I heard the president talk about resources today, that there will be resources now to be taken.
Okay.
Let me give you an example. Health was 100% devolved.
Can we talk about the resources when we come? Because I need his comments on that. Then we can come on the
first I
resources.
think
Yes.
it is not true to say that devolution has no structure.
Was it in the past or
Hard.
it's in the present? Yes.
But even now,
I don't know when that hard is. You may have to do what we do in scholarship, which is to specify the period. Because devolution has a structure, and it has had a structure. First, it derives from the Constitution at Article 6, I believe it is. And then Articles 174, I think, all the way to 200, talk about devolution, whether they are talking about the county assembly or talking about the county executive, or whether they are talking about the functions of the governor, and so on and so forth. But beyond the Constitution, we have got almost a dozen laws on devolution. If you allow me, I'll look at my notes here very quickly. We have got the County Government Act number 17 of 2012, the Public Finance Management Act of 2012, the County Government Public Finance Management Transition Act number 8 of 2013, the Transition to Devolved Government, which was very, very clear about how the transition of the responsibilities from national government to the devolved space was going to happen. The Urban Areas and Cities Act number 13, Intergovernmental Relations Act, and many other laws. I could go on and on through the catalogue. I think Professor Ogola was right at the start, but he seems to have got lost a little bit. I have to bring him back. You spoke of something called manners.
yeah,
We do not have manners.
yeah.
We have got institutions, but we do not do what those institutions expect us to do. For example, nobody says that you should steal. And when you steal, you are supposed to be arrested. When you are arrested, you are supposed to be taken to court, and the court should find you guilty and take you to commit maximum security prison. But we have a way of gerrymandering around with these things until they just disappear with the fullness of time. Accountability. How do we become accountable to our institutions?
Yeah. And in fact, Barak, if you leave it there, let me just talk about what I told you, that we devolve everything that was bad manners from top down. Talk about the pending bills, for example. The national government has 480 billion pending bills. The county government has 159 billion pending bills. The county was meant to devolve resources to the people so that people can make money, get jobs, and bring development down there. But when there's 159 billion pending bills, mean that
Across
Kenyans
the 47
offered,
counties.
yes, Kenyans offered their resources to the counties, and the services and resources they use their money, yet they didn't get their money back. So devolution was supposed to bring money to the people, but then actually it's taking away money from people. I have friends who have committed suicide because when they saw devolution, they saw opportunity. They resigned from some offices, went to set up business to supply it to counties. No one pays. You only get paid if you have some kind of preferences. So you talk about the issue, for example, I like the issue of bad manners. You're a governor. You saw how governors created what they so-called, I saw something like 120, I did announce about 120 billion shillings that have been paid to ghost workers since devolution began. And every governor creates their own ghost worker. Everybody has their own ghost worker list.
The money goes to them.
And money goes to them.
Okay.
And then there's just some kind of spending, like now we are offering a petition to come out with a way on which counties need to prioritize the use of resources, because there are so many things that, for example, that county officials...
How would you want to do that? And I think it already exists, because every approval of the budget and expenditure in a county is already going through the county assembly.
We have the Revenue Allocation Commission. their main job was to ensure that revenue is allocated properly, isn't it? That office is there. Is paid for that role. Yes. It has never met it.
Okay.
It has never met even to ensure how much money goes to development vis-a-vis how much money goes to recurrent expenditure. They have never done. We have many institutions and functions in Kenya that they are mandated to solve a certain problem,
but
they
they
never
don't
solve.
do that. But Barack, you have to agree with me that in spite of that, the 10 years can't just be 10 years without benefits in these counties that are tangible here and there.
They are not lost years. We are going through teething problems with
10 years later.
Oh yeah, because we are talking about a system that should take this country into the next 500 years. So we are going through the testing period. We are still warming up the engines. And
500 years. Jesus is coming soon, Barack.
Jesus will come.
Jesus is coming soon.
Even in the year 10 AD,
they said Jesus is coming.
It's now 2023 years. Jesus hasn't come back physically, but Jesus comes back every day. So now,
so then we can wait for 10 years.
So 500 years. So 500 years from now. But look at this. You know, Fred Ogola here comes from Siaya. I come from Kakamega. If you want to tell the difference between Kakamega and Siaya, in fact, nobody needs to tell you that.
I just drove into Kakamega last week on Thursday, Barack. I was so impressed.
Absolutely.
I was so impressed with the streets. I was there on last week.
Maybe that's why I don't see the difference. Yeah.
Because you're stuck in Siaya.
You're stuck.
There's no CBD in Siaya. CBD. There's none.
So it also depends on who the governor has been, on the governance in the specific county, on the accountability within the county. Because in certain places, people have been on a happy-go-lucky mission. There are counties in this country where the tradition has been that every Friday, money is withdrawn from the bank accounts and it's taken to the big man's office, and the fellows go out and
they buy the most expensive chairs,
most expensive whatever. If you look at, I don't know what Kakamega is going to be under Governor Fernandez Baraza. We are waiting, but if there had been a third term, Oparanya would have been re-elected because he was working for the people of Kakamega. And there are other counties, I think, where such things happened. Professor Kivuda Kibwana, for example, in Makueni. And so we go back to the question of accountability.
Even Uasin Gishu, where we are talking about today, Uasin Gishu is also very impressive. You've been to Eldoret town. It's also very impressive.
Indeed. Yeah. And talking about Kakamega, you went to Kakamega town. You should come to Emmanuel and see
your home area.
Come and see for yourself.
In fact, I was shocked when in Kakamega, you said downtown. You know, when I was in Siaya, I'm not joking, one day I drove into Siaya trying to find out the central business district to see the town. I was disappointed.
The soul of the county.
No planning. There's even no plan of the city. I was, where KCB is or where Equity
is that
Bank?
the city? You ask yourself.
There's no town in Siaya. There's no town, literally.
Which is a good thing. There's no town in Dubai. So
yeah, but there are serious challenges, gentlemen. Some of which we may even have to bring to the Senate and to the National Assembly, because the Senate is there basically because of devolution. And one would expect that Senate should be leading in legislation that is going to give growth and more accountability to the counties through good governance, through good legislation. There's a sense in which even ourselves as voters at the electorate, we have not understood devolution. We think that people who should be elected to the county assemblies are probably the dregs of the political space. And when you look at, say, a place like Manyuria, let me just go local completely. The little marketplace that we used to have is supposed to evolve into a new urban center. That when we talk about urbanization in the coming years, in the years of devolution, urbanization should not mean people migrating from villages to urban centers. Urbanization starts to mean the conversion of local village communities into urban centers. And as that is happening, it requires proper planning and proper management. How are we dealing with questions of water in these emerging new towns? That the place that we were calling Sigomere Market is becoming Sigomere Town, Sigomere City. How are we dealing with sewage? Yeah? What is the confluence between the sewage system and the water system? If you have dug a pit latrine somewhere, is it going to meet somewhere else down the line with water? How are we dealing with garbage collection, and are we separating organic from inorganic garbage? How are we dealing with street lighting? How are we dealing with security? How are we dealing with the environment? There are so many issues that require legislation in the Senate and in individual county assemblies. Those are things we have not paid heed to.
Okay. And the president says that about 60 services have not been completely devolved. I don't have time to go through that. I have about 15 minutes. And of course, when we talk about devolution, the conference is underway, and we'll be reporting live from there. So we'll still be talking about it. Tomorrow, I'm sure my colleague Eldoret will be talking about it. But when you're mentioning these counties, just remember one county that I usually go through that I'm really looking forward to see development. That's the county of Homa Bay, you know. I'm looking forward to what Gladys, that was where I went to primary school. Gladys Wanga will go with it. But there's a difference across the country in the 47 counties. Go to Mombasa. So there's something positive for devolution indeed in the last 10 years.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. And
just briefly, because yes, I need to.
Very brief. I want to say that we saw this equalization fund, which has not been well structured. I think that the people who look at it should look at it this way. For example, countries, for example, Northeastern have gotten some equalization fund, but there are some disadvantages that cannot be held by that fund. So, for example, if you go to Mandera, which is the farthest city from Mombasa, fuel is almost 30, 40 shillings more expensive than Nairobi. I don't know how much funds you can throw there in terms of equalization to make them. So I'm sure there must be some economic ways on how we can be able to deal with this thing rather than just trying to throwing some ballpark figures. Yes. Okay.
So, gentlemen, away from that, I'd like to talk briefly about the dialogue, because we can't avoid politics tonight. Let's leave devolution to Uasin Gishu. The first meeting was on Tuesday, the next one on Monday, the next one is on 21st, which is another Monday. So what I want to know from where you sit, political analysts and scholars, do you think we are headed the right direction finally with this? And the context of this is what we have seen in the last few days. Delaware Senator Chris Coons was here. Former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo was here. And of course, just across the fence, Mama Samia was also said to be here. So let me begin with Barack in this. Do you think finally we're getting this formula right of sitting down and taking the country forward?
I think we ought to be embarrassed as a people, generally, that each time we have elections, we must always come out in contestation, and it is contestation that becomes violent. We ought to be extremely embarrassed that we need international good Samaritans to come and talk to us. And each time they have talked to us and put us together, and we seem now to have agreed, we go to the next election, and again we come back and we say, no, the tools were not quite right. There is a saying that a bad workman quarrels with his tools. And if our tools are our laws, if our tool is the Constitution, if our tools are the systems that we use to do our elections, and we come out and we must burn our roads, we must burn houses, we must have people dying, I don't think we are ever going to get it right. I think the challenge with us in this country, even as people sit there, is not the Constitution. The challenge is constitutionalism, that constitutionalism is not in us. And I think that it doesn't matter how many times we are going to move the goalposts to say that the goal should have been here. If the post had been here, then we would have scored. That the referee should not have been like this, the referee should not have been like that. We are going to go through these cycles so many times. What we don't have are manners. And manners, Ken Mijungu, our manners, I think as Kenyan people, we must just agree that we are badly behaved virtually everywhere. You look at the way we behave on the roads, you look at the way we eat, you look at the way we behave with the schools, you look at the way we are behaving even in places of prayer, and you find that we lack fidelity to our institutions. There's really nothing wrong with the institutions, yeah? And if we were to address these institutions and be faithful to them, we would not have problems. So the dialogue, let it go on from where I sit for whatever it may be worth. I will wait to hear, because I don't even know what the questions are. I'd like them to be framed so that I begin understanding them. We were here with you some 2-3 years ago. We were talking about the BBI repeatedly. And I kept on asking, what is the issue here? And I kept saying, if this thing goes to the courts and it is placed before properly learned judges, it will not go anywhere, because how have they framed it? Professor Ogola here knows as well as I do, perhaps even better. In fact, when I look at him, I start saying that he knows even better than I do. That before you solve any problem, you must frame it. You must very clearly state what that problem is.
Frame and phrase.
Frame it, phrase it, explain it, then you will solve it.
Okay.
And so I'm waiting for them to frame the problem.
Let me get your perspective, Prof.
So mine is not very far from him, but a little bit asking very key questions here.
Go ahead.
The fact that Kenya Kwanza has agreed that there's a dialogue, is there an admission that elections were not done the right way, especially with IBC on the table? And I think that for me, it also insinuates that maybe they realized something was not done right. The second thing,
or maybe they were frustrated into doing it.
Yeah, that's the second question, is that, or is that they have been pushed and they have given into the pressure from the Azimio side, which, if it's the case, is even unfair, because now we're actually bringing bad manners into our governance system, because anyone can, one day you'll be president, then anyone just go to the street, then you have to talk to them. The other thing which for me is worrying from Kenya Kwanza is this. Kenya Kwanza said there was no issues about election and they're ready to move on. So I'm surprised when people are talking, they're having an issue, and they have brought 5 issues. If indeed they had no issues, why didn't they wait for the people who had issues to present them? Because Raila Odinga is the one who said he had issues. Then they said they have no issues, they should move on. Why are they having 5 issues? Which means that these people are all playing with us, both sides. Maybe the person who could be a little sincere is Azimio, because at least for them they went to the street. Kenya Kwanza didn't go to the street. So where are the issues coming from if they were not on the street? So for me, I'm so concerned about their issues. And some of them, for example, you saw the other day, again, I went to court, I don't want to mention, but the prime secretary's position, now they want to embed in the constitution, which means it's unconstitutional at the moment. So I'm seeing some cynical things whereby politicians come together and then they do their thing. Then secondly, there were other people on the seat apart from these two sides. Kenya was on the seat, they say, were in the seat because of cost of living. why are Kenyans also not in this table of discussion?
Okay.
So leaving other spectators outside and bringing people in. The issue of Coons, of course, very clear. Coons is concerned about the fact that Kenya is the only free trade area. If you like, the Kenyan market is one of the most advanced economies, and in this region is a place where you can launch from. Okay. And leaving Kenya to go to the dogs is not something that Americans may want to see. Then the issue of Obasanjo, Samuel Suluhu, they somehow remain like rumors. And then last but not least, I'm already seeing some bad hope here. People saying, the technical team of Azimio came, waited for 2 hours. These ones came late. I'm seeing a lot of things here which don't make sense. And my worst concern of all, when I hear that they want to anchor the dialogue in the Constitution, I'm wondering from which window, from which door.
Is it in the Constitution or it's in through legislation in Parliament? I don't think it can go to.
But you see, for example, in the end. If you pass anything like leader of opposition, the current government parliament setup, there is no contemplation of the opposition.
Yeah.
It is minority versus majority. If you bring it, you have to bring ministers to parliament, so there will be a government side and opposition side, because which opposition are you leading if there's no government in the house? So the confusion this would want to give us, I am very concerned.
I think even the structure of PCS, anyway, you told me not to give my, but as a lawyer, I'm just thinking why. Like, for it to be for you to change the structure of this government as it is, you need a referendum. And that's not the way they're going. I'm thinking they're going through Parliament, especially for some things. But over to you, Barak.
You see, you can go through Parliament, and after you have gone through Parliament, if the matters require a referendum, they will be taken to Kenyans for a referendum. There's nothing that says if you have begun a certain process and that that dialogue is being held under the aegis of Parliament, that then referendable issues may not be taken to the citizens. In fact, the law is quite clear in that regard. That said, I'm a little puzzled that Professor here expects that the government should have gone into the streets. I don't know against itself or against whom, because government recognizes every day that there are problems, that there are challenges. In fact, the reason we have government is because there are problems, that there are challenges to be sorted out. And if you have been running around and making noise and saying you are unhappy, you are aggrieved, and I say, okay, let us sit down, let me listen to you, that does not amount to admission of
there's a problem.
No, but they kept trying to dictate which problem should be discussed and which one should be out.
Order. But this studio.
We are running out of time.
This studio is a place where gentlemen discuss ideas. Yeah. One gentleman cogitates and the other gentleman listens. The way we have comported ourselves so far, it's been very admirable. And let's carry on that way to the conclusion. So when I say I will listen to you, that does not necessarily mean that I'm saying that there was a problem with the election, that I'm admitting that I'm in office illegitimately, as has been said, because these things were in fact adjudicated in other fora, and as recently as today, I even had one of the foreign missionaries in the country, the U.S. ambassador saying, yes, that this was a very free, fair, and just election. But I would wait. I would give them the benefit of doubt, those who are saying that it was not free and fair, to say, okay, come, in spite of the fact that we have gone through all the institutions and the processes, you are still aggrieved. Instead of beating up people and stopping those who want to go to hospital to get there, why don't you come? Okay. Let us talk. Okay. And in the process, if I also have some things which I see that potentially in the future they could send you into the streets again. I'll say let's talk about these things.
Gentlemen, I say it's exactly 11 on the dot according to the clock. So I'll give you seconds to close up the show, because this was just a mention. I know I don't want to put the car before the horse, but the discussions, the dialogue has just begun. So your final sentiments as we close the show?
So for me, on the thing I began with is that we need to move where institutions work, structures, processes, systems work, and we need to encourage Kenyans to have good manners, and if you like, institutionalism, constitutionalism, those are the things we are looking forward. And also I would urge this nation that the two sides of opposition sitting together to discuss who got only a third of the votes, Kenyans voting together in Bomas do not solve our problems. We need a national dialogue that is healing. And I can tell you, as Operation Ugatuzi, we believe also that non-violent can be more stronger than violence. And we're going to create a movement on how can you respond to where you feel aggrieved in a non-violent way, so that we avoid confrontation. Because no matter what you do, even if the intention was good to do mandamano and someone dies, it kills the whole intention, because life is infinite in value and life is divine.
Thank you, Prof.
Yes, I would say that all is not lost. Let us also look at the brighter side of things, that there are also good things happening, and let those things become the seed of hope for us, for future generations. Because he's talked about his fears. And let me tell you what my worst fear is, what makes me sleepless at night. What makes me sleepless at night is that we are now bringing up fresh, new generations that are being fed on the diet of hopelessness, on the diet of violent confrontation, on the belief that if I want to get things my way, then I must be violent. This is a bad place. It is not. If you have traveled, and we have traveled, starting from the neighborhood and gone further beyond, you always feel like you want to come back to Kenya. And things are not perfect in this country. Things can be made better 5 times, 10 times, 100-fold. Let us work on that. But let us also accept when there are some good things, because they are the building blocks into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I say now, Operation Linda Ugatuzi, why are you not in Gishu? Just briefly, I've run out of time.
We tried to ask for an opportunity, and they said they don't recognize us. Maybe also need to do mandamano so that we can recognize. We will do non-violent one, because we are Solomonic. We are not supposed to be confrontational.
Okay. Yes. Gentlemen, Professor Fred Ogola, always a pleasure having you on the table. Thank you so much for coming. And Barack Muluka, thank you for coming back. I mean, a year is too long. I've not seen you. I think I've seen you in some station.
It's a rolling stone that gathers no moss. So I'm happy to be back.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Damian Evans earlier on the show. On behalf of the whole team, my name is Ken Mijungu. Have a good night. God bless. Tomorrow, we are live from Uasin Gishu County. Devolution goes to the end of the week. My colleagues, Eric Latif, Zubaida Kananu, and Rita Tinina, and all of them, Hassan Juma, remarkably, is in Eldoret. We'll be broadcasting from 6 a.m. The ball is back on the white table at 6 a.m. Have a good night. God bless. We do this again whenever we have an opportunity. Good night.